Hashtag the day the stars learned to duck. Hashtag part 1. The Galactic Concordium had been watching Earth for almost 40 years. They were a careful people made up of many soft and gentle species, and they did not like to rush into things. When they finally decided that humans were ready to meet them, the decision was made by a committee. The committee met for 6 months. They wrote many reports. They drank many warm drinks. In the end, they agreed on one thing. Humans were dangerous, but maybe they could be taught. The lead researcher was a small, nervous being named Prelector Mivix. She looked a little like a praying mantis who had been forced to attend a very boring wedding. Her long green arms folded and unfolded constantly. Her compound eyes saw everything, which meant she worried about everything. Mivix had spent her whole life studying humans from far away. She had watched their documentaries. She had read their farming manuals. She had made detailed flowcharts about their social hierarchies. She believed she understood them. She was spectacularly wrong. The Concordium decided to start small. They would bring just one human to their great academy in space. One young human from the safest and quietest part of Earth. Mivix spent weeks looking at maps. She looked at cities and found them too loud. She looked at small towns and found them too full of unpredictable variables. Then her eyes fell on a large island near the bottom of the world, Australia. The orbital cameras showed wide empty spaces. They showed sleepy towns where people moved slowly. They showed beaches where nobody seemed to be fighting. This, Mivix said to the committee, was the perfect place. The humans here must be very calm and very simple. They lived close to nature. They did not have complicated weapons. They just sat in the sun and occasionally waved at each other. The committee agreed. They sent out the application. A young woman named Kira O'Malley saw the application on her university message board. She was 20 years old. She was short and sturdy, with red hair that exploded in all directions and a face full of freckles. She lived in a town called Toowoomba. She was studying how plants worked because she thought plants were underrated. When she saw that aliens were looking for an exchange student, she laughed so hard she snorted. Then she clicked the button to apply. Her mates thought it was a prank. Her mom thought it was a scam. Her dad said, "If it's real, don't pack the good boots." But Kira filled out the form anyway. In the part where it asked about her life, she wrote about her childhood. She wrote about the time a goanna lizard chased her across a car park and up a tree. She wrote about the time she accidentally stepped on a blue-ringed octopus at the beach and somehow did not die. She wrote about her horse, her brother's terrible driving, her secret talent for opening beer bottles with her teeth. She signed her name and sent it off. Then she went to the drive-in with her friends and forgot all about it. On the alien ship, Mivix read Kira's application with delight. The translation machine changed the words into something the aliens could understand. The goanna lizard became a small friendly gecko. The blue-ringed octopus became a pretty seashell. The beer bottles became ceremonial hydration vessels. Mivix showed the application to her team. Everyone was pleased. This young human, they said, was perfect. She loved nature. She was calm. She was exactly what they were hoping for. 3 weeks later, a glowing silver envelope hovered above Kira's doormat. Her mom screamed. Her dad came running with a hammer. Kira walked downstairs in her pajamas, picked it up, and read the letter twice. Then she turned to her family with a grin so wide it looked like it hurt. "Mom," she said, "I'm going to space." Her mom sat down slowly. Her dad put the hammer down. The dog hid under the couch. Kira read the letter a third time, just to be sure. Then she started packing. The next few weeks were a blur. Strange beings came to the house. They asked questions. They took samples. They gave her shots for diseases that had not been invented yet. Kira stayed cheerful through all of it. She offered them tea. She asked if the aliens had good coffee. She kept asking if she could bring her pocket knife. The day of departure came. The whole town gathered at the local oval. A shining silver ship landed in the middle of the cricket pitch, tearing up the grass and terrifying the local footy team. Kira walked toward it with her head high and her shoulders back. She carried a small duffel bag, an esky filled with sausage rolls, 3 pairs of thongs, and a worn copy of a bush poetry book. Her mom hugged her so tight she squeaked. Her dad shook her hand and said, "Don't start any fights you can't finish." Her friends shouted things that would make a sailor blush. Kira turned and walked up the ramp of the ship. Inside, a tall, elegant alien was waiting for her. She had deep purple skin and 4 delicate arms. Her name was Captain Zalara, and she commanded the ship with quiet dignity. She bowed and played a soft melody on a small harp. This was the traditional greeting of her people. Kira waited politely. Then she stuck out her hand and smiled. "Day. You mob got any tomato sauce?" The translation machine made a small whirring sound. Then it made a louder buzzing sound. Then it went completely silent. It had never encountered the concept of tomato sauce. It could not decide if it was a condiment, a medicine, or a weapon. It gave up and simply repeated the words back in a confused whisper. Captain Zalara blinked her large purple eyes. She smiled politely and showed Kira to her room. She told her the ship would leave soon. 3 days of travel. Kira put her esky down on the floor of her new room. She looked out the round window at the stars. She grinned. "Beauty," she whispered. "This is going to be chaos." And far away on a world she had never seen, 1,000 nervous aliens were already rearranging their schedules. Hashtag the day the stars learned to duck. Hashtag part 2. The ship landed at the Orandal Academy 3 days later. The academy floated in space like a giant crystal flower, shining under 3 suns. Silver bridges connected its many towers. Gardens grew on every level. Soft music played everywhere. It was the most peaceful place in the galaxy, and it was about to meet Kira. Kira stepped off the ship with her bag over her shoulder and her bush poetry book tucked under her arm. She looked around and let out a low whistle. The sound echoed across the landing pad. "Crikey," she said. "This is all right." A group of alien students had gathered to welcome her. They stood in a neat row, wearing soft robes, holding small flowers. Their teacher, Captain Zalara, introduced them one by one. Kira shook hands with each of them, though some did not have hands. One was a floating orb of glass. One had 17 legs. One was mostly a smell. Kira gave the smell a friendly nod. "Good to meet you, mate." Kira's room was on the 6th level. Her roommate was waiting for her. He was a squat, sturdy being with thick gray skin and 4 arms. His name was Borvith, and he came from a high-gravity world where everything was heavy and nothing ever changed quickly. Borvith was very practical. He had spent a week preparing for the human to arrive. He had reinforced the furniture. He had bolted the shelves to the wall. He had written a 17-page document titled Emergency Protocols for Unexpected Human Behavior. When Kira walked in, Borvith stood up and held out the document with all 4 hands. Kira took it, looked at the cover, and grinned. "Ah, that's thoughtful, mate." "Thanks." She put it on her bed and immediately used it as a placemat for her esky. Borvith watched her unpack. She pulled out her thongs. She pulled out a football. She pulled out a jar of something dark brown and unsettling. She held up the jar and smiled. "Vegemite. Want to try?" Borvith looked at the jar. He looked at Kira. He looked at the jar again. Slowly, he shook his head. "I am physiologically incapable of processing sodium." Kira shrugged. "Fair enough. More for me." She spread Vegemite on a cracker and ate it like it was nothing. Borvith made a small note on his datapad: "Human consumes pain willingly." That night, Borvith asked the question he had been dreading. "Is it true that your home world is constantly trying to kill you?" Kira thought about it. Then her face lit up, and she started talking. She told him about the time her cousin got chased up a telephone pole by a feral pig. She told him about the paralysis tick that could shut down your whole body if you didn't find it in time. She told him about the bull ants that fell from trees and bit you just for walking underneath. She told him about the brown snake that had lived in her shed for 3 years before anyone noticed. She told all of these stories while laughing. Borvitha's gray skin turned pale. Then it turned white. Then he began to whimper softly. By the time Kira finished, Borvith was sitting on the floor with all 4 arms wrapped around his head, unable to speak. Kira noticed something was wrong. She reached over and patted him on the shoulder. It was a gentle pat by human standards. It sent Borvith rolling across the room like a boulder. Kira helped him up and apologized. Borvith said it was fine in a very small voice. He went to lie down. The next morning was Kira's first class. It was called Interstellar Conflict Resolution Through Mutual Understanding. The teacher was a 7-limbed being who spoke in whispers and never raised her voice. The class was held in a circular room with soft cushions on the floor. All the other students sat quietly, meditating. Kira walked in, waved to everyone, and flopped onto a cushion with a loud sigh. The teacher began the lesson. She spoke about how different species had to learn to resolve arguments without violence. She spoke about empathy. She spoke about listening. She spoke about the importance of never making sudden movements. Then, as an example, she mentioned that Earth had a continent called Australia that was known for having several species that could cause distress. The class turned to look at Kira. Kira sat up straight. She smiled big. She took this as an invitation. For the next 45 minutes, Kira talked without stopping. She told them about the saltwater crocodile that could bite a boat in half. She told them about the irukandji jellyfish, so small you could barely see it, so deadly you'd wish you were dead within an hour. She told them about the gimpy plant, the suicide bush, whose sting felt like being burned with acid and electrocuted at the same time. She told them about the great white shark. She told them about the funnel web spider. She told them about the drop bears, which she described with a completely straight face as ninja koalas that fall from trees and go for the throat. 4 students fainted. 2 had to be carried out. The teacher stood frozen with her mouth open. She had forgotten how to teach. She had forgotten how to breathe. Kira finished her stories, looked around at the horrified faces, and laughed warmly. "Yeah, Australia's a good spot," she said. "You should come visit sometime. Just wear a helmet." After class, word spread fast. By dinner time, half the academy knew about the human who laughed about death. The other half heard about her by breakfast. Students whispered in the halls. Some were afraid. Some were fascinated. A few quietly started taking notes. Meanwhile, Captain Zalara had been watching the security cameras in her office. She sat very still. She pressed a button and called Mivix, the researcher who had chosen Kira in the first place. She showed her the footage. Mivix watched it once. She watched it twice. Then she made a sound like a kettle boiling over. She did not speak for a long time. "We made a mistake," Mivix whispered finally. Zalara nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "But I don't think we can send her back." Outside the window, somewhere in the distance, an alarm began to sound. Hashtag the day the stars learned to duck. Hashtag part 3. The alarm grew louder. Red lights began flashing across the academy's crystal towers. Zalara stood up from her desk, her purple skin rippling with tension. The intercom crackled to life. "Attention. Unidentified vessels detected on approach vector. All students report to shelter levels immediately." Mivix's compound eyes went wide. "Pirates," she whispered. Zalara shook her head. "Worse. The Vexuri haven't attacked in years. But this isn't their signature. The ships are too small. Too many of them." Down in the classroom, Kira heard the alarm and watched the other students panic. They scrambled toward the exits, crying and bumping into each other. Borvith grabbed Kira's arm with all four hands. We have to go. Now. Kira looked toward the windows. Through the crystal walls, she could see them. Dozens of small, jagged ships streaking toward the academy like a swarm of metal wasps. She had never seen anything like them. But she had seen magpies dive bombing in spring. She had seen bushfires racing across ridges. She had seen a rogue bull charge through a fence. Right, she said calmly. Where's the closest shelter? Borvith pulled her down the hallway. Students screamed and pushed. Teachers tried to form orderly lines. It was chaos. Kira kept her head down and followed Borvith's heavy footsteps. They reached a reinforced door marked Shelter 7. Borvith punched in a code. The door hissed open. Inside, 40 students huddled together. Some were crying. Some were frozen. A young floating orb of glass trembled so hard it cracked. Kira pushed through the crowd toward the front of the shelter, where a single academy security officer stood with a small stun rod. He was shaking. How many of them? Kira asked. The officer blinked at her with 3 eyes. At least 50 ships. Maybe more. They're landing in the garden sectors now. We have maybe 10 minutes before they reach this level. Kira looked around the shelter. One door. No windows. No weapons except a stun rod that looked like it couldn't scare a house cat. 40 terrified students who had never thrown a punch in their lives. She thought about what her dad used to say. When you're cornered, don't wait to be found. Are there maintenance tunnels connected to this shelter? She asked. The officer nodded. Behind that panel. But they're not secure. They lead to the service lifts. Perfect. Kira walked to the panel and pried it open with her fingers. Inside was a narrow crawl space. Borvith. Get everyone quiet. If anyone comes through that door, you don't fight. You hide. Understand? Borvith's gray face showed something new. Not fear. Respect. What are you going to do? Kira grinned. She pulled her pocket knife out of her duffel bag. Going to have a look around. The crawl space was dark and tight. Kira moved fast, counting her turns. Left. Right. Straight. The sounds of the invasion grew louder above her. Boots. Shouting. The crash of breaking glass. She popped open a vent grate and slipped into a service corridor. 2 pirates stood 20 meters away, their backs to her. They were tall and thin, wearing battered armor, carrying rifles that glowed with red energy. Kira moved quietly. She had learned to sneak up on kangaroos as a kid. These pirates were louder than a herd of cows. She got within 5 meters before they heard her. The first one started to turn. Kira swung her duffel bag into his face. It was full of sausage rolls and a bush poetry book. The pirate went down hard, more confused than hurt. The second one raised his rifle. Kira ducked under it, grabbed the barrel, and shoved it upward. The energy blast hit the ceiling. She headbutted him in the face. He dropped. She took their rifles. She didn't know how to use them. She left them on the floor. Her pocket knife felt better in her hand anyway. The next hour was a blur. Kira moved through the service tunnels like a ghost. She found 3 more pirates looting a supply closet and locked them inside. She tripped 2 others with a cable stretched across the hallway. She used a fire extinguisher to blind a group of 4, then knocked them out with a metal pipe she found near the trash compactors. By the time the main pirate force reached the central tower, 12 of their crew were unconscious. 4 were trapped. 2 had run away after seeing a red-haired shadow appear out of nowhere. The pirate captain, a scarred brute named Vex, received the reports with growing horror. "One person," he snarled into his radio. "One person is doing this?" The radio crackled back. "We think it's a human, sir." Silence. Then, very quietly, the captain spoke. "A human?" Here? On this soft academy? More silence. Pull everyone back to the ships. Now. But sir, we haven't taken the vault. I said now. The pirates retreated faster than they had arrived. Their ships lifted off, leaving behind their wounded and their pride. When Concordium security finally reached the central tower, they found Kira sitting on an overturned vending machine, eating a sausage roll, watching the last pirate ships disappear into the stars. Good day, she said, waving with her free hand. You lot just missed them. Hashtag the day the stars learned to duck. Hashtag part 4. The security officers stood frozen, staring at the scene. 12 unconscious pirates lay in a neat row against the wall. Their weapons were stacked in a corner. And in the middle of it all sat Kira O'Malley, red hair wild, eating a slightly squashed sausage roll. The lead officer, a tall being with 4 shimmering wings, lowered his weapon slowly. You did this alone? Kira shrugged. Had a bit of help from a pipe I found. Good pipe. Solid. She patted the metal pipe beside her. Anyway, you got any water? All that running made me thirsty. News traveled faster than light. Within hours, every screen in the academy showed footage of the pirate ships retreating. Within a day, the story had spread across the Concordium. A human. One human. Had fought off a pirate raid without any training, without any weapons, without even breaking a sweat. But something strange happened. The official reports didn't match the rumors. The rumors said Kira had fought 50 pirates. The reports said 12. The rumors said she had used advanced combat techniques. The report said she had used a pipe and a bag of sausage rolls. The discrepancy made people uneasy. If the truth was this strange, what else didn't they know? Mivix locked herself in her office for 3 days. She rewatched every piece of footage. She reread Kira's application. She made new charts. New graphs. New flowcharts. And slowly, a terrible realization began to form in her mind. She called an emergency meeting with Captain Zalara. The two of them sat in a dark room, surrounded by floating holograms of Earth's ecosystems. We misunderstood everything, Mivix said quietly. We thought Australia was peaceful because it looked empty. But it's not empty. It's full. Full of things that kill. Zalara tilted her head. I don't understand. Mivix pulled up a hologram of a funnel-web spider. Then a box jellyfish. Then a saltwater crocodile. Earth didn't make humans soft. Earth made them hard. And Australia made them the hardest of all. They grew up in a place where everything wants to eat them, sting them, or set them on fire. So they learned. They learned to laugh. They learned to keep going. They learned that fighting is just another word for Tuesday. Zalara was silent. Then she asked the question that had been haunting her. If this is what one young human can do, what happens when more of them come? Mivix didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, Kira sat on the roof of the academy with Borvith. His gray skin had returned to its normal color. His 4 arms were wrapped around a warm drink. The 3 suns were setting, painting the crystal towers in shades of gold and red. Do you think they'll send us home now? Borvith asked quietly. Kira thought about it. She watched the last light fade. Nah, she said finally. Reckon they're too scared to send me back. And too scared to keep me here. Then what happens? Kira smiled. It wasn't a comforting smile. It was the smile of someone who had figured something out before anyone else. Reckon they're going to have a lot of questions. And I don't think they're going to like the answers. Far below, in a secure hangar, the pirates' abandoned ships were being examined. Inside one of them, a technician found something strange. A message. Not on any screen or datapad. Carved into the metal wall with a knife. It said, *, tell the others. The humans are awake, *. The technician didn't know what it meant. She didn't know who had carved it. But she felt cold anyway. Very, very cold. She closed the ship's hatch and walked away quickly. She did not report what she had found. She went home and did not sleep for 3 days. Hashtag the day the stars learned to duck. Hashtag part 5. The carved message haunted the Concordium. The humans are awake, no one knew who had written it or why. The pirates refused to talk. They sat in their cells, pale and trembling, and said only one thing over and over: don't send us back. Don't let the human near us. Captain Zalara convened the High Council. Leaders from 100 worlds gathered in the Great Dome. They spoke for hours. They argued. They drank warm drinks. And in the end, they reached a terrifying conclusion. The pirates hadn't come to rob the Academy. They had come to send a message. But the message wasn't for the Concordium. It was for someone else. Someone the pirates were afraid of even more than Kira. Mivix stood before the council, her compound eyes reflecting the worried faces of 1,000 diplomats. We assumed the Vexury pirates were the biggest threat in this sector, she said. We were wrong. They were running from something. And now that something knows we have humans. The council chamber went silent. Then a small, elderly ambassador from a distant world raised a trembling hand. What are you saying? That someone out there has been watching Earth? Waiting? Mivix nodded slowly. I'm saying the pirates didn't attack us for treasure. They attacked us to see if the rumors were true. To see if humans were really here. And now we've given them their answer. Kira wasn't at the meeting. She was back in her room, packing her duffel bag. Borvith watched her with growing concern. You're leaving? Not leaving, mate. Just getting ready. She folded her bush poetry book into the bag. Added the metal pipe. Added the sausage rolls. When something's coming, you don't wait around holding flowers. You get your gear together and you have a go. Borvith's leaves, he had grown leaves recently, a side effect of spending too much time around Kira, trembled. What's coming? Kira stopped packing. She looked at her friend. For the first time since he'd met her, she wasn't smiling. Something that's been watching Earth for a long time. Something that didn't make contact because it wasn't sure we were worth the trouble. But now it knows we're out here. And it knows we're not alone anymore. 3 days later, the first ship arrived. It wasn't a pirate ship. It wasn't a Concordium ship. It was something else. Something ancient. It hung in the space above the Academy like a dark moon, silent and patient. No hails. No threats. Just presence. The Academy went into lockdown. Students hid in their shelters. Teachers prayed to gods they hadn't believed in. Captain Zalara stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the unknown vessel on her view screen. What do they want? She whispered. The answer came not through the radio, but through the walls. A voice. Deep. Old. Speaking directly into the mind of every being in the Academy. Asterisk, we have traveled 10,000 years to find a worthy enemy. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have never been challenged. But we heard a rumor. A whisper across the dark. A creature from the death world. A human, asterisk. We came to see if the rumor was true. Kira felt the voice in her bones. She stood up from her bed. Borvith grabbed her arm. Don't. Please. She gently removed his hands. Got to, mate. That's what we do. She walked through the empty hallways. Past the gardens. Past the silver bridges. Past the security officers who stepped aside without a word. She reached the main airlock. She pressed the button. The door hissed open. The dark ship loomed before her, close enough to touch. Kira stepped onto the ramp. She didn't have her pipe. She didn't have her pocket knife. She had her thongs, her shorts, and her grin. Day, she called out into the void. You mob looking for someone? The dark ship opened. A figure emerged. Tall. Armored. Featureless face mask. It carried no weapon. It didn't need one. The air around it crackled with age and power. "You are the human," the voice said. "Not a question." "That's me." Kira folded her arms. "What's it to you?" The figure stepped closer. Behind it, more figures emerged. Dozens. Hundreds. An army of ancient warriors, silent and waiting. Asterisk, we have come to test you. To see if the death world truly bred something worthy. Fight us. Or surrender. Those are your choices, asterisk. Kira looked at the army. Then she looked back at the academy, where 1,000 terrified aliens watched from every window. Then she looked at the dark ship again. She laughed. "Nah," she said. "I'm not fighting you. And I'm not surrendering. I'm going to make you a better offer." The figure tilted its head. "There is no better offer." "Yeah, there is." Kira took a step forward. "You've been conquering for 10,000 years. Sounds exhausting. How about this instead? You come down. Have a sausage roll. Meet my mates. Learn to relax. Because from where I'm standing, you don't need a fight. You need a holiday." Silence. The ancient army stood frozen. Then, slowly, the lead figure reached up and removed its mask. Underneath was a face not so different from Kira's. Older. Weary. But human. "We have been away too long," the figure whispered. "We forgot what home felt like." Kira's grin softened into something real. "Yeah, mate. You have. Now come on. The barbecue's this way." # The day the stars learned to duck. # Part 6.